Hello YouTube and welcome back to Fernando Comics. Today we're going to be taking a look at one of the most iconic fights in comic book history, Thor vs. Superman from George Perez and Kurt Busiek's JLA Avengers. Specifically, we're going to be taking a look at the fight between Thor and Superman and seeing if the two could have done anything to win earlier, to have changed the outcome of their match, or to have been able to use their abilities more effectively. Because for those of you who haven't actually read JLA vs. Avengers yet, Thor and Superman actually have two different fights with two different outcomes. In the first fight, you can see how badly outgunned the Avengers are compared to the Justice League. Not only do they have less members with them than the Justice League, but their members are far less powerful overall. Truthfully, at least 4 of the members on the Justice League can only really be handled by Thor, and that's actually exactly what he ended up doing during that fight. If Thor had not picked up the slack, the Avengers would have gotten swamped. The actual fight against Superman himself is pretty short. Thor rallies the Avengers and then puts Superman through a building, and Superman stays down for, I would say, a few moments at the very least. It's difficult to say how long it took Superman to recover, but we can see in the silhouettes of the teams meeting each other that he had not yet joined the fight by the time the two teams had met each other. The next time we see Superman, he tag teams Thor with Martian Manhunter. And by the end of the conflict between the Justice League and the Avengers, Superman seems to be fully recovered. So who won round 1 between Thor and Superman? It's hard to say. If you have to give advantage to anyone, it would obviously be Thor. He's the only one who landed a legitimate hit. The only retaliation that Superman was able to offer was with the help of another Leaguer, and I would think that that's because he was still feeling a little woozy from the damage that he took. However, I don't think we can say that Superman was down for like a 10 count or anything either. So just declaring Thor the victor of round 1 seems a little bit too much, but at the same time, I don't think we can argue who had the better showing in the first fight. So screw it, round 1 goes to Thor. Anyways, moving on. The next fight is the much more famous of the two battles and has a definitive end without any interruptions from outside forces until the end of the fight. The two combatants have a very brief stare down before Thor takes the first swing, but Superman's too quick, so he actually flies up first and then dive bombs Thor with a left hand. And if you guys notice, along with that left hand, Superman is talking some major smack. And that's a factor that we're going to talk about at the end of the video, because that's not within Superman's character typically. After that, there's a brief exchange of blows, where I like to see that Thor was able to physically hurt Superman with one of his punches. Then Superman returns it, and Thor sends Superman flying through the tree line. And it's here where we reach the first misplay of the fight. It looks to me like Thor got confident after the result of that exchange of blows, and he starts talking when he should have been shooting lightning. Because that was the second time that Thor put Superman on his back, and the second time he failed to follow up on it. The next part of the fight has 2 critical points that could have resulted for victory for either party had they taken advantage of it. But as we all know, only one of those parties did take advantage of it. You can see Superman charging up a major dose of heat vision and looking at Thor like he's about to tell him to go back to his country. And then he nails Thor right in the chest with a beam that very clearly hurt Thor. It's here that Thor is presented with a few options. He could have A, lifted Mjolnir to block the beam, B, flown away or tried to evade the beam, C, absorbed the beam. And that would have certainly been his best option, because you see, once Thor starts absorbing an energy source, he doesn't have to let them turn it off. Which means that Thor could have left Superman in an extremely reduced state while actually charging himself up and unleashing that energy at 100-fold, which is something he's actually canonically done before. But as we all know, Thor chose option D, which was run right through it. Running through that continuous beam of heat vision left Thor in a really fragile state. It hurt him bad. The logic behind this, if we can call it logic, was that if he can get to Superman, he can knock him out. However, by the time he reached Superman, he was weakened enough for Superman to catch the hammer blow. And this would be a misplay for Superman, actually. Thor was weakened enough to the point where Superman should have just flown out of the way. Got out of the way, sped around him at super speed, and he could have safely avoided that hammer swing without having to catch it. Because if that had gone south, Superman ends up with an Uru hammer to the head. But it is a bit of a moot point because we know what happens after that. Superman catches it, talks some more smack, then knocks Thor out. So misplay there or not, Superman did get the end result that he was looking for. So both fighters had opportunities in the fight where they could have gained better advantage or even won the fight. But in the end, it came down to mentality. Thor was fighting very prideful in this fight, a little too prideful for my tastes actually. It wasn't exactly out of character, but it was certainly on the lower fight IQ for Thor typically. Superman, on the other hand, was fighting abnormally aggressively, and this was due to the circumstances of the crossover itself. Because of the merging of Marvel and DC universes, people with particularly important ties to their universe, like Superman and Captain America, were being adversely affected by these circumstances. In the case of Superman, he was showing elevated levels of aggression, and that does get noted in the comic. Either way, that'll do it for today, you guys. Thanks for sticking around and listening, and we'll do some more of this in the future. Alright, remember to check out some of the links in my description, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. Bye-bye.